In 2020, two founders flew from London to San Francisco with a startup idea that was destined to fail. They just hadn't realized it yet.
Got the first version done in a couple of weeks. Of the 15, 14 of them didn't even click the link. One clicked the link and then didn't create an account. And we're like...
They were in pivot hell, and this was already their fifth idea. It wasn't until a month before they had to pitch their idea to investors that they decided to make one last pivot. And this one, well, it changed everything. This last-minute pivot is the genesis of PostHog, and today it's one of the most successful companies to come out of Y Combinator, on track to surpass 100 million in annual revenue this year. But the thing that fascinated me the most about this story wasn't what they built, but how they built it.
Where it's like, no, we're gonna go like so insanely far past what is normal that, okay, PostHog's kind of weird. It's like, it needs to be weirder still. Like, it needs to be so weird that it polarizes.
I first learned about the way PostHog does things through a friend of mine. He pitched it as this wildly autonomous workplace, a place where people get to decide for themselves what they want to work on. There are no deadlines, and do more weird is a core value. Now, to be honest, I didn't believe him until I started working here and I saw it for myself. The PostHog team is fun, they're opinionated, and they're unafraid to completely throw out the playbook and try out wild new ideas. Now, there's a lot that we can learn from the way that PostHog does things, and that's why I wanted to share this story, because I just found it so fascinating. So to do that, we have to go back to the very beginning. Before they ever started working on PostHog, James and Tim were actually co-workers. Tim was this talented engineer who started coding at age 11 and had quit school by age 16 when he found out he was making more money than his teachers. And James, on the other hand, who is 10 years older than Tim, was a VP of sales at this company, but he also has a technical background as well. Now, James had quietly been working on this idea that he's had for some time. He has this long commute to and from work by train every day, so he would spend his time coding away at this project. So when one day, Tim announces that he's leaving for another company, James immediately jumps on this opportunity.
I'd announced that I was leaving, basically almost immediately. James was like, hey, do you want to go grab a drink? And then over beers in London, he started talking about the thing that he'd been working on. He'd been working on the sales tool, kind of, coding that on his way to and from work, because he had this like long commute by train.
I showed up being like, I think I have this idea that we'll probably have product market fit for in a couple of weeks' time.
I had, I think, a month or two before this other job was going to start. And so I said, well, I'd be happy to kind of help out and, kind of see what we can do in a month or two. And then I'll probably go and do this company. But in the meantime, like, I'm very happy to help. But it was more, I think it was more like, let's just see where this goes, because James hadn't actually quit his job yet. And then I think quite quickly it became obvious that, like, if we wanted to take this seriously, he was going to have to quit his job too. I was going to have to not take this other job, and we were just going to have to go all in and trying to kind of do this properly.
The project they began working on was a sales territory management tool. So in sales, a lot of your time is spent chasing deals that won't actually close. So the idea was to create a system that takes in any information you have on deals you're working on, and then apply a statistical model that ruthlessly filters out any deals that are less likely to close. Now, I've done sales, and honestly, this sounds like a good idea. That is, if it works and if people are actually willing to pay for it.
So I had about 15 sort of Series B, C, D sales leaders queued up saying they wanted to use this. Well, they said they wanted to use it. We got the first version done in a couple of weeks, sent them the link to create an account. Of the 15, 14 of them didn't even click the link. One clicked the link and then didn't create an account. And we're like, it was like first good, we should have read the mom test, was that we hadn't done any of the user interviews correctly.
The book James just referred to is called The Mom Test, and it argues that startup founders often ask the wrong questions whenever they're trying to validate an idea, and because of this, they get misleading feedback. Our friends and families will often lie to us out of politeness, or they'll just try to be encouraging. So instead of asking questions like, would you use this? We should be asking questions about how they're currently trying to solve the problem we're trying to solve and what their experiences have been. Founders will often look for support as a strong signal, but instead they should look for signals like signups, pre-orders, and watch user behavior as they're using your product. So essentially, watch what they do and not what they say. Okay, so the first idea doesn't work out, but instead of losing momentum, they quickly pivot to the next idea. They move on to build another sales tool. This time, it's a tool to help sales managers better manage meetings with direct reports. But this idea also doesn't work out, so they pivot again to build a sales CRM tool. But this wouldn't be their last pivot. This repetitive cycle is what we call pivot hell, and they would be in this for the next 6 to 7 months. They would spend on average 4 to 5 weeks trying to execute an idea before moving on to the next one. It wasn't until pivot number 5 that they finally began getting some traction, and this was the idea that they would enter Y Combinator with.
So we built this thing where we would put a survey into a PR, so in the kind of CI/CD checks, they would just ask, how difficult was the code to work with that you touched? Should this be refactored or not? What were the issues? And so what was really cool is we were able to give kind of senior leadership, give them a map of the code base and where the tech debt lived. I've been a Hacker News reader for a very long time. I'd consumed a lot of the YC content over the years on, how to build a startup, how to build a product, all this stuff. And so, it felt like a real long shot to try to apply to YC. And we felt like we were pretty early. And in fact, the pivot to this tech debt tool happened literally like a couple of days before the application deadline. And so we applied really having not actually had any traction yet, having not really built the product. I spent a lot of the time in our demo video actually just like editing. We're in a WeWork. We did about 7 takes of this intro video because it was so late that we kept kind of giggling and kept distracting ourselves and not taking it that seriously. But eventually we got a take and we filled in the whole form and everything. And it was a long shot. Our plan wasn't, we'll only do this if we get into YC. We just, we applied, saw how it went, and just kind of went from there.
Now, if you're not familiar with Y Combinator, it's one of the most successful startup accelerator programs out there. Founders will enter YC in batches, and through this process, they're going to go through an intense mentorship program on how to better refine their idea. Every YC batch will end with a chance to demo your product in hopes of potentially getting some funding or more exposure. Now, startups like Airbnb, DoorDash, Stripe, and a lot of other companies that you would probably recognize have all gone through YC and have really used it as their launchpad. So Tim and James successfully get into YC. They travel from London to San Francisco to go through this program, but things start off a little bit rocky for them.
Yeah, it was January 2020, obviously when the batch started, and we'd had a little bit of we had a couple hundred users, and again, our retention and usage numbers were pretty good. But then we talked to our customers and tried to make them pay or sell something here. It was just kind of obvious that people didn't value it. For example, we went to one customer who was using it quite actively, and we were like, well, do you want to pay us $20 a month for this? And then that person was like, well, how about $2 a month? And so it's kind of obvious that what we were building just wasn't valued. That's kind of when we realized that that's just not what we're excited about. It's not what we're, it feels like we don't have the experience there. I'd never actually been an engineering manager, nor had James. And so doing engineering productivity tools didn't really suit right with us. They're also as an engineer, not tools that I would have liked to be used on me or on my code. And we just weren't excited about spending, the next 10, 15 years of our careers kind of working on this stuff. That's when we decided to kind of hard pivot into something else.
So even though they had traction, nobody wanted to pay for their product. Now they're faced with the decision to pivot again, except for this time, they're a month away from demo day. But there was something during each pivot that they had to do that would actually lead them to their next and final idea.
we're walking across San Francisco, and it's just on the walk. We started talking about like, we're not solving that. On the walk, we realized we're not solving this problem properly, and we also don't feel like trying to solve it either some other way. And so we want to change direction here.
Every time we pivoted, we installed a competitive product analytics tool. And it was just very obvious to us that those tools weren't built for developers, right? And there was a lot of things that kind of indicated that, like how easy it was to debug, how easy it was to kind of really dig into the data at a granular level, how easy it was to set up the SDKs. It was kind of 1,000 kind of small issues that compounded. And so it really was a combination of like that open source ethos, but really just like building this tool for developers.
So they finally land on what is now PostHog, a product analytics tool built for developers first. And this time, things are different. They write up a Hacker News post and it quickly hits the front page. And this is the first sign of real validation. Then the GitHub repo quickly gets 1,000 stars, and developers are requesting features faster than they can keep up with. And this is when they know they're really onto something.
When we launched, we kind of had immediate traction, and it's really, I think, frustrating if you're in the period, while you're still pivoting or still trying to work it out. But it really is one of those things, especially with these kind of tools where it's all product-led growth. There really is just a moment where suddenly things start working and the market's pulling the product out of your hands faster than you can keep up. And I talk to a lot of founders now who are kind of in that period where they're pivoting and maybe they're asking like, do we have product market fit? And the really frustrating answer is like, you'll know it when you see it.
After Y Combinator, PostHog took off like a rocket ship, closing a $3 million seed round in April of 2020 and reaching their first 1,000 users a month later. Within the first year, PostHog had close to $1 million in annual revenue and had grown the company to 25 employees. Now, today, PostHog is close to closing in on $100 million in annual revenue before the end of 2026 and has over 460,000 registered organizations. Everywhere you look, people are talking about PostHog. So much so that still to this day, the #1 source of signups is developers telling others about PostHog. And this raises the question, what's the reason for this growth? Well, you can always say luck has something to do with it, but there's actually more strategy behind this than you think. And that's what I want to talk about next. To understand PostHog's growth, we have to understand the philosophy behind how the company operates. So PostHog models closely the Netflix management style written about in the book No Rules, Rules. The book outlines CEO Reed Hastings' management approach, which is this highly autonomous, high-trust environment that allows employees to be the driving force behind what they do. So, for example, employees get to decide what they want to work on, and they're not told what to do by management. There are no deadlines, and employees have the freedom to abandon quarterly or yearly goals in pursuit of new objectives if they see fit. Now, the idea behind this is to maximize talent density and freedom instead of relying heavily on processes and strict rules.
Yeah, I mean, we learned early on that if you treat adults as adults, then there's a very large percentage of the population that takes it very well and actually thrives in that environment.
Yeah.
So we are really strong on this entire you are the driver philosophy, where you are the one who just does things, and there's no one really like micromanaging you or checking over your shoulder.
We usually don't get a lot of influence from leadership. We sort of just like think to ourselves, it's like, what do I want to work on next quarter? And so we write it down, we have a meeting, talk about it with the team. It's like, does this seem like a good idea? Which one of these should be prioritized by us? We decide and we just build it. I don't think leadership has ever said no to something we wanted to build, but leadership will sort of nudge us as like, hey, I think this is really cool because this aligns with these goals. Also think about these goals that the company also have, like, for example, sometimes nudge us and be like, by the way, there's these marketing efforts that might be going on. Maybe this would be a good idea to work on, but I've never had sort of like, don't work on this, work on this. they sort of trust you to make the right decisions by giving you the right context.
The strategy is simple. Hire the best people and give them the tools they need to win.
I remember in a previous startup, I would just argue for hours about the positioning of a button in the backend interface of a tool that 20 people saw per week for like 4 hours. I remember once I was arguing with the CEO of the company for that. In PostHog, the argument would be like, why haven't you already shipped it? Like, why are you just yapping so much? Like, what's the issue?
The thing about this environment is that it only works with certain types of people. Not everybody thrives in it, which is why it's so important to be selective and ensure that everybody who joins the team is self-driven and is comfortable owning projects from start to finish. And this is what lets management lead with context and ensure that every team and individual will figure out the rest.
In a lot of ways, this has also been like a filter we have explicitly when hiring. Like, the culture attracts a certain amount of people, and not everyone will be successful in this culture. But the people who are successful in this culture are really happy and really successful. And I remember a quote from Steve Jobs, cliche as it might be, where he said something like, A players really like working with A players, and they have never been in an environment where they only have A players around.
Building the right kind of team, of course, starts with the interview process, and a key part of how PostHog does this is with something called a super day. A super day is just a paid workday done at the last stage of your interview process. This is where you get an assignment for the day that you have to work on, and it allows you to see what it's like to work at PostHog and, of course, see what it's like to work with your potential future teammates. Now, I actually did this process just about a month and a half ago, and the thing that I really liked about it is that while the candidate is being evaluated, it also allows the candidate to see if this is even an environment that they can thrive in, and it allows both parties to really get a feel for each other before making any kind of commitment.
Every single super day that we give is very much like, here's a bunch of tasks that is very close to what you would be doing on a day-to-day basis. We don't give you priority. We don't give you a complete and concrete finish line. We actually don't really know how you should prioritize or do any of these things. It's very open-ended. They just give you an approximation of the things that you might be doing on the job, and you have to figure out how to get from a bunch of very vague tasks to a complete super day. It really forces you to think critically about, like, what is the impact of this on the business? Why should I pick this goal over another? How much time should I spend on this goal compared to the relative impact of all of the other things I could be doing? And then, like, at the end of the day, you get to explain why you made those decisions. And you really get to see how people prioritize and think, and whether or not they're comfortable taking very vague things and taking it all the way to the end.
Okay, so we dug a bit into how PostHog operates as a company, and I think that's important because it sets the right context for what comes next. How PostHog achieves success in terms of growth. Now, to be clear, I never think it's as easy as just pointing to one thing that a company does, but rather a culmination of things, and of course, luck usually plays some kind of role in this. But in my eyes, the defining move was the decision early to not be the tool for everyone. What I mean by this is that there were already several product analytics tools out there, but none of them were made for developers. Now, James and Tim, being developers themselves, already knew the issues that developers faced, and they knew the limitations of these other tools. So they set out to build the best product analytics tool for developers, not for marketers, not for sales teams, for developers.
Get your personas and your ideal customer profile down. If you have a hyper-specific view of who you're building for, you can tailor all of your branding, all of your marketing, all of your sales to that person. Your attitude should be, how can we be literally the best company in the world at this one specific thing for this one specific user? Make it the best freaking experience you can possibly achieve, and you have to go all in. You should be so all in for your persona that you actively piss off the customers that don't fit who you're targeting.
The point that James is making is that too many companies try being a tool for everyone, and because of this, they just end up having more competition, and in many cases, they end up watering down their core product just to try to reach a wider audience. Now, On the other hand, having a hyper-specific view of who you're targeting allows you to focus on making a single type of customer happy and making a tool so good that they feel like it was made just for them. And it's this kind of satisfaction that creates a product so good that people can't stop sharing with others. And in a world that's more competitive by the day, this is more important than ever.
Growth has changed for companies because software has changed completely in the last year or two. And software has become fiercely competitive because it is so quick to build. There is less and less of a barrier to entry. Less technical people can build much better than they ever could before. More technical people can build even faster than they could before. It's absolute chaos. That is all to say, Cult is how you win. We have hundreds of thousands of users. That is our sales team. We're lucky enough because of this to have a sales team of several 100,000 people. They're much larger than anything we could ever build ourselves, and they're much more effective. Who's going to do a better job of convincing you to use our product? If it's a customer who is delighted with us, that's more credible still than even a salesperson would be.
Let's take a second and look at the PostHog website. It has this early 2000s operating system feel to it. You either love it or you hate it. Some hate it, and that's the feeling that PostHog wants you to have. The recent marketing efforts that put up these bus and billboard ads all over San Francisco, they have the same effect. Developers see these and they get it. It's in your face, it's funny, and it even has people taking pictures of them and posting them online anytime they see them. The PostHog newsletter, the voice it has online, everything has a developer focus to it that allows PostHog to be fun, weird, and opinionated in a way that only developers would understand.
I've said a few times that working in PostHog is like working in a stand-up comedy. The entire company is just full of comedians. Like everyone thinks that they're the funniest thing in the world, and most of them are. And so the fact that everyone's a comedian really helps with the weirdness culture.
People know us for being a bit cheeky and a bit sort of like upfront and honest, and I think people like respond to that, users like that. Like everyone around you is amazing and like incredible at their job, and like it's intimidating, horrendously intimidating, but also at the same time it sort of like feeds that fire in you of being like, I want to be better at my job. I think just being around people who are pushing each other to be the best at their job, I think that's very like seductive and like addictive, and people like to stick around with that. I feel like I've kind of been ruined for any other job now, because to go in and be like, well, I will do this because that is autonomously what I want to do and I think is right, and everyone will be like, no, what are you doing?
Since I have joined PostHog, I have had the opportunity to see how all of this works. Decisions are made fast and nothing is off the table. If you have a crazy idea, you own it. You're the driver, and it's your job to take your swing and prove why it's the best decision. It's this type of approach that makes PostHog not just another brand online, but one with a personality and one that really knows its customer base. So I guess the thing that we can take away from all of this is that when you have a team full of talent, sometimes the best thing you can do is get out of their way and let them cook.